Ciao Internet, my name is Axon and this is my arcade. Welcome back. Today we're gonna talk about something which is really something that's been around for 3 years almost, since the last generation of consoles was launched in 2020. But it's something that just came up again in my mind because I'm listening to a bunch of podcasts recently, talking mostly about gaming in general, but many of these creators, these content creators on the internet, are console gamers actually, even though I am primarily a PC gamer. I tend to listen to content creators that also play on console, right? And there is something that is going around. This idea is still, like, to my very very big surprise, there is this argument going around between console gamers that the current generation of consoles, PS5, Xbox Series, and stuff like that, has still to show its potential, right? Everybody's waiting for this game that is the real next gen game that's gonna come on this console, that will not be restrained but by being supported on older consoles and stuff like that. Because up until now, most of the games that launched on console were compatible with older generation consoles, right? And there's this sentiment going around between console gamers that this is somehow restraining the potential of these, let's call it, new systems, right? And why is that so? I was wondering why these console gamers are constantly thinking about this, that these consoles have not shown their potential yet. I think there is like a lot of aspects to this story, and one of it is just how console gamers are used to see things evolve in a generation. In older generation of consoles, when consoles were not just small PCs like they are now, because right now console is just x86 machines, right? Just smaller PCs with unified system memory. That's all they are. And back in the day, for example, in the PS3, Xbox 360 generation, consoles were actually more customized gaming machines. They use different architecture, and they actually tended to show more of their power towards the end of the generation, because developers just got more comfortable with the tools and with how to utilize the power of those machines better towards the end of the console generation, right? And that was to be expected, because most of the game developers were used to develop games on x86 architecture, like on PCs, and when they had to port this game to consoles, they had to really get into the understanding of these weird architectures that were used before, and that made console get better as time went on, basically. And this is one other thing. One of the aspects that made this expectation for console gamers possible. The other one is that, especially this current generation of consoles, have made some very misleading marketing claims, right? If you look at this is the PS5 console box, and if you look at here on the top right corner of the box, it says 8K and 4K 120 capable. All right, which is not lying, because technically the I/O of the console supports those kind of resolutions and frequencies, but this is not by any means an indication of the performance that the machine is capable of while running games. This is just the signal that they support as an output. Okay. But there has there has been this kind of expectation that console manufacturers have made that these are actually at least 4K capable gaming machines, right? So the combination of this old memory of the older generation of consoles and the marketing claims that both Sony and Microsoft have made with the new console generation has somehow tricked every console gamer into thinking that the fact that no games are actually running in a good way at 4K resolution on these consoles is just a matter of time, right? In due time, it will happen. Okay. Now, let's try to uncover this mystery and maybe dig a little bit into the specs of these consoles, just to make you understand why I think console gamers are just delusional about this. It's pretty much a delusional dreams of these kind of gamers that with this kind of hardware they could run games, modern games, at decent frequencies at the 4K resolutions and well, let's go into this now. I will say something about 4K resolution afterwards, because 4K, as if you have listened to one of my videos before, of many of my videos before, you may know that I think that 4K resolution for gaming is straight up dumb. But I'll get into that later. So let's do a little check on the technical specs of the GPUs of this console. I won't even like focus on the CPU, even though so they have like this new console have pretty capable CPUs compared to the older gen, but because technology is RDNA 3, I think, no, not RDNA, I'm sorry, Zen 3. I think they are Zen 3 CPUs in there. But the thing is, since the power envelope of this console is so low, has to be low, and the package is so small that clocks for CPUs are really much lower than what the similar 8 cores, 16 thread CPUs can do on a PC, right? So that's, let's say it's kind of a 8-core Zen 3 CPU, but a little bit like with a little bit of like less performance, just because they can't run as fast. So that being said, we know that most of the performance for games comes from the GPU side of things. So let's see what GPUs are inside, which kind of GPU are inside these new consoles, right? It's not a new argument. It's not a new topic. Most of gamers know about this. I don't know how many console gamers actually understand what this means, but this is not news by any means. But I want to rewatch this just as a reminder and make like a confrontation with similar GPU tech on the DIY PC market, and let's see how performance compare there. And that could be a nice way to understand why this dream of 4K gaming on these machines is delusional. Well, it is. So, PlayStation 5 GPU, the Oberon, right? It is a 36 compute unit, RDNA 2 architecture, AMD made GPU, right? The theoretical performance is 10 point something T-flops, right? Teraflops. This is the figure for PlayStation 5. It is like a narrower GPU compared to the Xbox Series X, but it's clocked a little bit faster, so performance is kind of the same. It has also a little bit less memory bandwidth, but all in all, it's kind of similar. The fact that it's very the clock is higher on the PS5 kind of like makes up for the wider GPU that the Xbox has. In some games, higher clock speed are better than like having more cores. In others, it's the other way around. So the two consoles are basically they are very very similar in performance. Let's say it that way. Also, they have unified memory on the system, so you got your GDDR6 like utilized by both the GPU and the CPU side, which is an advantage of consoles because it's easier. Every component of the system access to the same memory pool. It's faster, and they also benefit from like proprietary algorithms for texture compression, stuff like that. So there are some advantages on console for those kind of things. Still, GPU power is GPU power, and you cannot go around it much, very, very much, as many people would think. So keep in mind this figure here. So 10 T-flops, 36 compute unit, and 2.2 gigahertz of clock. All right. It's not that important that we like understand right now what all of this means exactly, but there are figures that we can at least compare to other GPUs, right? So this is 10.2 to 10.3 T-flops for the PlayStation 5. So as I was saying before, the Xbox Series X has a little bit of a wider, significantly wider GPU actually, because instead of 36 compute units, it has 52 compute units. Same architecture, RDNA 2. The die is a little bit larger, of course, and the theoretical performance is 12.15 T-flops. Okay, so it's not that much higher compared to how much bigger this GPU is, because the clock is lower, right? We got 1.8 megahertz. Okay, and even though it has less of like a lesser memory pool, instead of 16 gigabyte of memory, the GPU has 10. Still, having it wider memory bus, the bandwidth is actually higher than the one on the PS5 GPU. Anyhow, let's say we take these two figures and we take an average of it, right? One was 10, this is 12. So let's say that on average, new console are 11 T-flops of theoretical performance, right? Which is not all it matters when it comes to actual gaming performance, but still, it's a number that we can compare to other stuff to have a reference. All right. So I want to just point out that on this side, this is Tech Power Up, which is a big like repository of GPU information, and they have this kind of traffic light indication for recommended resolution to game on these systems. And I want to just point out, right, the only green resolution indicated for this kind of GPU is 1080p. So it means it's very good for 1080p. It's kind of all right for 1440p. It's kind of bad for 4K. So this is the indication that the site gives you. Same goes, exact same recommended gaming resolution go for the PS5 GPU. All right. Keep that in mind. Still, let's go and try to find out a GPU, like a DIY GPU for computers that has kind of a similar performance, right? Similar figures. So everybody said at launch that these two consoles mostly performed kind of like RTX 2080, which at the time was the current like, yes, in 2020, no, it was not the top of the line, but it was a nice GPU for the time, right? Okay, so the console actually didn't launch so underpowered. But what I want to say is that this gaming resolution recommendation here are actually like transposed to gaming in 2023. So when this card launched in 2018, it was considered the best, like almost the best 4K card ever made, right? But at the time, 4K gaming was like really at the beginning of its existence, and the recommendation in 2023 is not to game at 4K. Yeah, it's kind of alright, okay? It is yellow instead of orange, which is kind of weird since this is kind of the same performance as the consoles, but in the console, like as you have seen, it was orange. It was not recommended to play in 4K. Anyhow, the figures are almost those, so it's 10. So it is a little, actually, the theoretical performance of this graphics card is actually a little bit lower than the consoles. So that may like, but it is a different. It is also a different architecture, right? This is an NVIDIA architecture. So yes, even though every tech site and stuff like that compared the new console to the 2080, and there is a reason for that, because there's a reason because they didn't go and compare it to an RDNA 2 card, which is like more of a straight comparison. That's because there's no GPU for the RDNA 2 lineup of AMD that actually directly compares with the specs of either PlayStation or the Xbox One. But if you wanna go there and look at some of the RDNA 2 offerings, we have the 6650 XT, which is actually pretty small. It's a 32 compute units, which is less than the PS5, right? And the T-flops are in a little bit more than the PS5, right? We got the memory bandwidth. I think it's lower. It's much slower than the consoles. So console have a really big memory bandwidth advantage, I have to say. So that's why it's very difficult to compare these architectures. But it's kind of when you look at benchmarks, you can kind of see the similarities here. So this is not very good as a card to take for comparison, because it has just 8 gigabytes of memory and a very small memory bus. So even though and it also has lower compute unit count, so it's probably less effective than the consoles. So let's look at a little bit higher to the 6700 XTs. So this is actually kind of in between the two consoles. So this is why I wanna take this GPU in account for our comparison here. It has 40 compute units, so it's an in-between number. It has less memory bandwidth, which is kind of usual for this kind of cards compared to consoles, but the buffer is a little bit bigger, so it's kind of more comparable to that. And the T-flops it's actually higher than both consoles, just because the clock are very, very high. There's much higher clock speeds than the consoles. So I think it all balances out pretty much. And if we see the chart here, the comparison chart, we see that the 2080 is 10% less powerful on average than this card. And the console were just a little bit more powerful, I think, than the 2080. So it's, yeah. Let's just take the RX 6700 XT as a point of comparison, just because it's the same architecture, right? And it is kind of in the same ballpark of performance. Okay. So we found our GPU to use to understand more how much these expectations for console are wrong. So this card is considered to be, and it's also being recommended by every tech website or YouTuber or whatever you want to call, whenever you want to watch or listen to. this has always been recommended as a 1440p card, right? Very good 1440p card. You can get higher than 100 frames per second in most games, blah blah blah. So it's a great 1440p card. Still, when it launched, and also right now, it's kind of okay for 4K. It can do some things in 4K, but the thing is, as I was saying before, people are expecting these consoles to get better by the time goes on. But let's see what happened with this graphics card, with the games as they came out, right? As newer games came out, let's see how this graphics card fared. Okay, so let's take 2023, 2022. Maybe let's go back to 2020 at best. This is 4K resolution benchmark results for the 6700 XT graphics card. Okay, with a and these tests were made with much better CPUs than the console have. How many of these games can get to 60 FPS in 4K on this graphics card, which, mind you, is more powerful, actually a little bit more powerful than current consoles, right? You can go even back further in time. Metro Exodus 43. Resident Evil 2 was very optimized, was a very nice game. These are kind of Anthem, open world, 48. Apex Legends, very light. Cyberpunk, 44. Godfall, 44. Marvel Avengers, 35. 51. 33. 42. 59, almost there. 53, 51. So all of these, apart from like Forza Horizon 5, which is a very optimized game, barely hits 60, right? 47. Spider-Man is a remaster game. It's really light to run. Look at 2023, man. This is the thing. This is the trend that has to like wake up these people. This is the trend that has to wake up console gamers, right? Look at the 2023 titles: Last of Us, Forspoken, Callisto Protocol, Dead Space, Elden Ring. Some of these are in the even lower than 20 FPS on a graphics card, which is a little bit more powerful than current consoles, and tested with a CPU that's probably a lot more powerful than consoles. Look at this. Apart from Capcom, which is kind of like the game engine gods right now, because you can get 71 FPS on Resident Evil 4, which is bonkers. But because if you go and look at Resident Evil 2, it was doing 65, and now you get the newer Resident Evil remake going up to 71. Anyhow, all of these games which came out this year don't hit like don't even hit 30, most of them. And this is a trend that is probably going to get worse. I'm sorry, because here's the deal: as new games are being developed, new kind of games are being developed, they will be more expensive to run, more difficult to run. There is a trend, of course, of like bad optimization in the last couple of years, and it is undeniable. But apart from that, games are getting very heavy to run. There are a lot of open world games which are really resource intensive. Higher resolution like 4K need a freaking ton of RAM. I'll just say that nowadays 16 gigs of RAM for a graphics card, it's considered like the base for a mid-range graphics card nowadays, right? And mid-range gaming today, it's kind of saying 1440p gaming or 1440p ultra wide gaming, something like that, right? So 3440 by 1440p, right? So that's considered like a mid-range kind of resolution to target for gaming. And 4K is still the upper end of resolution targets, right? And 16 gigs is considered like the baseline for very nice 1440p gaming. And it's kind of insufficient for 4K gaming with recent games, right? On like recently made games. And it is becoming very hard to run game at high resolutions with less than 16 gigs of RAM. So this console both has less of that. So the PS5 actually has 16, but that you understand what I'm saying, right? These consoles are very capable of playing 4K games right now. How would you think that in the future, that in the last 4 years, that these 4 to 5 years that this console have to left to live on the market, how would you think that this trend is getting better, with games being more complex and simulation becoming more complex, and lighting becoming more complex, and AI and other stuff in games becoming always more and more, every time more and more complex than the year before? Apart from like lighter gaming, right? Everyone expects this console to run indie title, 2D title, like kind of easily in 4K. But we know what we're talking about. Every console gamer has this delusion about this next gen experience that still has to come. This is only getting worse, man. This is only getting worse. So what's the deal here? What's the issue? The issue is this freaking 4K stuff. Why people and console manufacturers and the market are so fixated on this 4K resolution? It's like it's just, it goes beyond my mind, my comprehension, really. 4K gaming is stupid. The amount of resources that you need to run a game in 4K compared to what you need to run a game in 1440p, it's bonkers. It's so much more difficult. It's like twice. It's more than twice, actually. It's crazy. 1440p, it's a very, very nice compromise. You get crispy graphics, and you cannot say that my TV is 80 inches and 1440p is not nearly enough. Man, if you have an 80 inches TV, you're sitting like 4 meters away from that TV, 3 or 4 meters away at least from that TV. And I guarantee you that at that distance, especially playing video games, not watching movies or stuff like that, playing video games, 1440p resolution, plenty enough for you to enjoy the game. Plenty enough. And you're gonna get the performance, because these consoles are actually pretty capable 1440p machines. Pretty. And the amount, if this was the targeted resolution for this console, the highest targeted resolution of the console, you would not have seen so many games launch without a 60 FPS mode. And you probably would have seen like competitive games run and at 120 Hz, even at the full 1440p resolution. That's just it. The only thing wrong, there's nothing wrong with consoles. This is the wrong thing. The only wrong thing with console gaming is the idea that you need to play in 4K. And the idea that this is something that like TV manufacturers had pushed so hard on the market, because the only thing that TV manufacturer can boast is resolutions, right? It's the more easy to understand for people, most obvious like spec to sell, to people, because it's very difficult to sell like color depth, contrast ratio. Like contrast is kind of easier than the color depth, but the perception of contrast is like, I don't know, it's more difficult to sell, I think. And you can see it like on TV boxes everywhere. The big badges, the golden badges that you see on TV boxes is just resolution. Now we get into 8K TVs, and if the market for TVs like really pushes this freaking 8K stuff, which is useless, completely useless, it's a waste of bandwidth for everything. If they continue this, I guarantee you, even this console have to say on the box that they are like, what the fuck it is, 8K capable, right? It's so stupid. The next consoles will have 8K 60 as their target. I bet my ass on it, because TV manufacturers are gonna push 8K TVs. People are gonna like look for 8K TVs. They're gonna get cheaper. Like nowadays, a 4K TV, like a regular 4K TV, is very cheap. And this is gonna happen again. New console with target 8K. People are gonna get pissed because you are gonna get like 20 FPS 8K gaming on new console, something like that. It's just stupid. And there's gonna be a new delusional dream going on with the new generation of console when they came out. I don't know what's gonna be in them in the new generation of console. What kind of GPU is gonna be there? I think Microsoft actually said that the next generation is gonna come out somewhere around 2028. So we got 5 more years to go. Probably since the GPU development cycles are getting longer. Finally, there's gonna be probably a couple of more generation of GPUs for PCs until the new console come around, right? So let's say you're gonna have the 9000, so RDNA. So we got RDNA 3 right now. It's gonna be 4 next year. And then you get RDNA, I don't know, let's call it, we don't know how it will be called, but let's say it's RDNA 5 or 6 on the new consoles, right? The jumps between generations, the last generation is it's not been so great as we hoped for. It's been like kind of lackluster, but I think they're gonna get their shit together for the next generations, because the MCM technology is getting better. It was the first time around for AMD with the MCM architecture, so I think the next one is gonna be better. But even still, I don't think that in 2 generations time for GPUs we're gonna get 8K 60 GPUs that run that kind of resolution and frame rate on small underpowered boxes like consoles are. Maybe you will get 8K gaming on PC by the time. Maybe, just maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure about that. And that's also not just about like GPU technology. It's also about like gaming technology, like game design technology. I don't know what's gonna happen with game design. The trend right now is that everything is getting worse and worse and worse. It's more difficult to run, apart from like a couple of proprietary engines which are great, like the RE engine or the ID Tech ETech engine. Most of the engines, most of like the most used engines are there, like Unreal 5 and stuff like that, are getting actually way more difficult to run with the time passing. So I think this is gonna stay a delusion. And what I would like to see for these generational consoles going forward is just let people choose 1440p. And let the GPU do its job and get 60 or above, right? That's my hope for people that game on consoles. Anyhow, let's close this up with a final thought. Console gaming dudes out there, quit waiting for the real next gen game. Quit waiting for the real next gen experience, as you call it. It's not gonna come. Games are getting harder to run. You're gonna see nothing but AAA games on mid to high settings on your console just to make them run at almost 30 frames per second in 4K. That's what you're gonna get on this generation of console. If that's plenty good enough for you, more power to you, have fun. But please just stop waiting for a miracle. For a miracle, not miracle. Sorry, English. Just stop waiting for a miracle. It's not gonna happen on these boxes. That's just the way it is. So, thank you very much for listening. If you like my content, please like, share, and subscribe. And see you in the next video. Ciao, 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 ciao.